award winners with mentoring and pro bono support. Further support is available via our website, where you can find all our past presentations on our YouTube channel, along with today's presentation and other useful resources. So I'd like to introduce today's webinar, Lights, Camera, Traction. It's how to create and use short videos to tell your social enterprise story with our guest presenter, Ravenel Chambers. Ravenel's from Be Inspired Films, and they specialise in working with social purpose organisation and video for the web. Ravenel's clients include Deutsche Bank, Deloitte, Nesta, Oxford University, Centrepoint and Ben & Jerry's. So today's webinar, we've got an hour on the webinar, and the presentation will be about 45 minutes with the opportunity of questions post the webinar. So please keep typing your questions throughout the session, and we'll have the questions at the end of the session. So I'm now going to pass you over to our host presenter, Ravenel Chambers. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everybody. Thanks to UnLtd for arranging for this as part of their series of webinars. Just before I start, if you want to engage with us on Twitter, we're at Video Know-How. And if you connect, if you can also add in at UnLtd, so we can follow the conversation, that'd be fab. Just quickly before I start, I'm going to tell you a little bit of an overview of what I'm going to do. I'm going to share a little bit my story with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunity that video offers, and the power of storytelling as well, and how to really get focused on getting your story clear and connecting with your audience. Some of the biggest mistakes that people use from our experience when using video, some of the barriers to creating video, and then some practical tips on how to actually, if you're going to go about doing it yourself, or even if you're working with a video production company, tips on actually making the best of your story and how to create the best videos possible. That'll include things like sound, lighting, composition, interview techniques, and so on. Okay, I'm going to kick off. So my story, my name is Ravenel Chambers. I was born in Ireland. As a teenager, I wanted to be a stockbroker. I was quite a cocky, young, arrogant chap who wanted to get really rich. But I took a completely different path in life. I went down the route of working for charities internationally and trying to make a difference in the world, if you like. My connection with video and storytelling happened first in 1995. I was living in East Africa, running some programs there with street children, and I wanted to tell that story. I wanted to get people engaged with what we were doing and help raise funds and so on. So I made a film. In those days, it was back on High 8. I don't know if any of you would remember that, and I edited it from VHS to VHS. So it was very primitive, if you like, and I had to actually, to show it to people, I had to get them into a room or post them a VHS cassette. So things have changed hugely. Then later in the Midlands in Birmingham, I was running mentoring programs for kids who are at risk of exclusion from education. And again, I made a video. That was in 2003. So I'd seen the power that it had to tell a story. And then later, after I did my MBA, I started Be Inspired Films, which is really just about helping organizations and people who are trying to make a difference to tell their stories. Times have changed massively. As I said, in those days, either you had to have a huge budget to get your story out there on TV, or you had to get people in a room, to actually watch your stories. And as now, we have all these great platforms on social media where videos literally plug and play, and it's free for you to distribute it. So it's a huge shift in how you're able to get your story out there much more easily. Now the opportunity is massive. Google is still my preferred search engine, but a lot of people use YouTube actually as their preferred search engine, particularly younger people. It's said that you're 53 times more likely to get a first paid result on Google if you're actually using video, and Google owns YouTube also, so it really does help, because they want to try and give the searcher the best possible results to give them the information they're after, and video really is a powerful way to actually convey information quite quickly. Sounds outrageous, but Forrester research says that 1 minute of video is worth 1.8 million words. How they work that out, I'm not sure, but it just goes to show it's very, very powerful. I don't know if any of you have seen a celebrity recently in the street. I find it quite amazing whenever I've seen somebody like that, and I've asked many people that on their courses. there's a part of you that wants to go over and say hello to them. There's a part of you that kind of feels like you know them, that you've already got a relationship with them, although you don't, but it's because you've seen them many, many times. So the power of video is also there to help build rapport and trust and relationship with your potential customers, even though they haven't met you yet. By having videos that have you or your team or your organization in it and people engaging with those regularly, they're already building a relationship, even though they haven't quite necessarily met you face to face. Now, storytelling is a very powerful way to connect, particularly to connect emotionally, to draw people in. You've got intrigue, you've got morals of the story, there's wisdom you can pass on over, for generations and generations, way throughout history. It's the way that actual knowledge, wisdom, values is being passed on through storytelling. Even just looking at that picture there, you're instantly intrigued as to what's going on, what's the situation, what's the dilemma. So there's a thing called the hero's journey, which is kind of a blueprint, if you like, for a lot of the hugely successful stories and films that we would have seen, like Star Wars and so many others. The protagonist or the hero starts out an ordinary guy or an ordinary girl, and they're faced with a challenge, a call to action, a call to adventure. They don't feel worthy of it. They feel unequipped to deal with it. They get a mentor, or they get some guidance, and then they manage to rise to the challenge. Then they go through many, many difficulties and setbacks and so on and so forth. But through they rise to these challenges, and in a way are kind of reborn, or they become a new person through a transformation. So it's a kind of blueprint you'll see again and again and again, and it's an interesting thing to look into and have and study to see how you can apply it perhaps to your story. Stories are often, and the hero's journey, based around this idea of problem and solution, overcoming difficulties, overcoming adversities. And if you can understand and you can link that to what you're doing, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and then how you're able to solve it, and use anecdotes or stories around that, then you will really connect with your audience. So what's your story? It's really important from our experience, first of all, to get real clarity and focus around what it is that around your story, whether it's your personal story, the story of your brand, or the purpose behind what it is you do. And it's really important also to understand who's your audience. So we've got a variety of people there, even got a nice cow in the corner. So it's about really focusing in who are the people that you're actually trying to connect with, and figuring out what do they care about. What is it that really will move them? It's also important to try to be creative. I think it's something that everybody, it's a sort of a buzzword, obviously, to try and be creative. But I think if you can try and do it within your own authenticity. So, for example, also here to try and be a little vulnerable. It's hard. I don't know if any of you remember when Andy Murray lost at Wimbledon. He kind of broke down, and actually a lot of people really connected with him, because sometimes we're always showing that we're strong. We don't let people in. So here also, if you can identify what's different about what you do and kind of try and lead the pack, but at the same time, I think I'll come back to that word again and again and again. If it's about authenticity, we can study the trends and the buzzwords and the kind of things that are being talked about at a particular time. But if we can really connect with our own story and the story of why it is you're doing what you're doing, and be authentic with that while bearing these other things in mind, then that will be your strongest path. This is our story, Be Inspired Films. I started Be Inspired Films in 2009 after having just completed an MBA at Aston Business School, and I did my research on venture philanthropy. So I wanted to find a way to connect my business inclinations, if you like, with trying to make a difference. So this is a short video which kind of tells a bit of our story, and at the same time talks about trying to make a difference through storytelling. We've tested this video, and it should work okay. If you have any issues with it, just let them know in the chat, and they can let me know, and we may move through it if we need to. But hopefully it'll work fine. See you again in a few minutes, 2 minutes or so. All around us, People and organizations are doing amazing work that has a huge impact on the lives of others. And let's face it, we live in times where there is a great need to try and make a difference for the future of our planet and all of its people. And it's not only charities that are putting social impact into focus. Businesses everywhere are beginning to see the bigger picture too. We all love it when we see something that inspires and empowers us, that moves us to want to be part of the solution and to do something to make a difference. But there's a problem. Many great stories aren't being told or shared, and their potential impact is being lost. That's where video can really help you. Video is an immensely powerful way to involve people with your story. Its mix of sound and vision creates strong emotions and instant relationships. It allows you to connect with people across the world at a time that suits them. Video can simplify complex messages and make them feel personal and authentic. And because it's so open and transparent, it allows your personality and your values to shine through. More and more organizations are harnessing the energy, emotion, and reach that video offers. They've recognized that people love making, watching, and sharing videos that move them. Whatever your aims, bringing your social impact story to life through video or animation should be an exciting adventure. You want to relax and enjoy the ride and not worry about the possible dangers. To make this possible, you need a team of experienced guides who know the terrain, experts who can support you on every step of your journey, wherever your starting point. The kind of people who can produce broadcast quality productions, train your staff to make their own videos, or live stream your events to a global audience. Ideally, they'd be friends who speak your language too. At Be Inspired Films, we offer you all of these services. We're proud to be the trusted partner of a wide range of diverse organizations. We help unlock the value in your social impact work. Our story is made up of all your good stories. We can help you make an even bigger difference to the great work that you're doing by bringing it to life using video and animation. Our team will work with you strategically to make your budgets go further and to make sure that there's consistency and quality across all of your video content. To find out more, get in touch today. Great, so hopefully everyone managed to be able to see that. Just on that topic of telling stories using video, you know, there's so much video uploaded to YouTube and different platforms all the time, but what is it that makes a good or a bad video? We ask this to every group on our courses, and we get a whole variety of answers, but often we get answers that fall into two kind of camps, if you like, or two categories. You've got the technical stuff, so it might be bad lighting, bad sound, bad composition, and then you have the sort of more story stuff, so lack of focus, lack of clarity, you know, maybe not very enthusiastically presented, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to look at the 5 biggest mistakes that we encounter when people are using video to tell their stories. The first one, and this is particularly something we find a lot with our clients, and also I think it's something that is a human sort of thing. We want to try and squash everything in. We're trying to tell the viewer of all the things that we do in great detail. And I think this is a real mistake, because it means that your video will end up to be too long. It may, you probably very likely lose people, particularly online. And again, it doesn't have clarity around its purpose, because you're trying to just squeeze everything in rather than really trying to focus on what is your objective for the video. And that kind of ties into the second one. It's kind of a lack of clarity. Oftentimes when people will sit down with us for the first time, and even big clients, sometimes they'll say, we want to make a video. And I've actually said to them, I said, well, don't bother. Just don't bother. Why are you making it? And sometimes then the conversation sort of, you know, we ask a bunch of questions and we sort of discuss together and so on, and it becomes clear, but it takes some time for that to tease itself out. the clearer you can be on the focus or the objective for the video, then the more likely you are to achieve it. So it's not just actually that you're creating a video, you're actually trying to achieve something within your organization. Video is a very powerful tool to help you to do that. Okay, another one is bad sound. This is more so true when people are trying to make their own videos. It's something that I think sound, but Danny Boyle says that you know, film is sort of 70% an audio experience. You could probably go to the cinema and close your eyes and actually follow the story. But oftentimes when people are making their own videos, perhaps they don't, they're not as aware of the importance of it, or they don't have the equipment to enable them to get good sound. So it really is a big turn off. If the sound is bad, you'll probably lose people within the first 5 seconds, to be honest. No clear call to action. Again, you know, it's nice that people will watch your video and they'll learn a little something about your organization perhaps, and they may even sort of feel good about what you do. But if you haven't got a clear call to action that's tied to what your purpose for the video, then you're missing out. Often people at that point, if they are feeling good about what it is you're doing or about your brand, if you give them a clear call to action, they're probably much more likely to actually do it. No clear distribution plan. Now this is something that's still very, very common even amongst bigger clients. You know, sometimes we think, well, we can make a video, we can stick it online and on our website, and that's great. We've sort of mission completed. But in actual fact, to really get reach for your video content, you need to start to think about having a distribution plan. And this doesn't necessarily need to cost you a lot of money, although there are big organizations that can you can pay to distribute your video for you. But if you're trying to do it on a budget, it does take more than money. It takes time to build the relationships with the right people. So if you can contact bloggers or influencers or people who are related to your industry, and as long as you're producing content that is of value to the people that their listeners or their fans, if you like, or their readers, then they may agree to actually share your content. So then when you actually press upload on your video, if you've got all those partners in place and they're happy to share your video too, it has a huge reach. That was 5 already. This one I've added in as an extra one. It's budget, because oftentimes when especially social entrepreneurs or social enterprises, you know, it's they don't necessarily have big budgets. So it's just really important to be clear around your budget. Do you have no budget? Do you have some budget? So then you can find the most appropriate person to be able to help you. Because there are obviously big agencies, there are smaller agencies, there are, you know, video students, there are freelancers. You know, there are people at different ranges of budget, but it's really important to be clear about it and be upfront about it, so that you both are able to get that the expectations are clear from the beginning. There's also an option to create your own videos, which needn't cost you anything necessarily, or you can do some training. We run video training courses to actually give you a head start, to actually be able to take you just above that quality mark, to make sure that you're confident and you have the skills to do it yourself. That kind of ties into the 2 main barriers, really, that why more people aren't using video, because I think everybody kind of understands that it's something they'd like to be using or will be advantageous to them. So it's cost, and also the skills and confidence to do it themselves. I don't know if anybody remembers the flip camera. It looked a bit like a phone. Unfortunately, I think it went out of business because probably it didn't have a phone on it. But it made video making very accessible. A lot of schools bought them, a lot of individuals bought them. And we met many people who said, yeah, we've got a bunch of them, we've given them to our staff, they've run out and made their own, you know, taken video content and so on and so forth. They said, unfortunately, a lot of it's not very good, or we didn't really plan it, so what we ended up with, we haven't really got any further than that. Now, do your videos need to be perfect, particularly online? No, not perfect. Above a certain benchmark, certainly, but have a watch of this video and tell me what you think. It's quite curious, some of the stats you'll see afterwards.
Alright, so here we are, one of the elephants. Cool thing about these guys is that they have really, really, really long And that's cool. And that's pretty much all there is to say.
It's a pretty amazing video, right? Well, you might be surprised at some of these statistics. So just over 10 million YouTube views, over 70,000 likes, over 73,000 comments. Pretty surprising. Maybe not when you see the next slide. So this was uploaded by Jawed Karim. He was the co-founder of YouTube, and it was the first ever video on YouTube. Now you might ask yourself, you know, if you were going to launch a video platform, you know, would you not try and impress people with something very fancy and very slick and so on? They chose not to, because they wanted to have a platform that was accessible and sort of to anybody, you know, that anybody could make a video and put it up online. And as we know, there is a huge amount of video content on YouTube. A lot of it is rubbish, but nonetheless, people are only going to really be able to create regular video content when they can do some of it themselves. People don't have the budgets to hire in a video production company on a regular basis. Even bigger organizations, they have a budget once or twice a year to be able to hire in for particular projects. But the rest of the time, and I think people actually like that homemade feel, that kind of personal human touch where it feels really authentic. Certainly there shouldn't be any barriers to you watching it. The sound, the composition, the lighting, etc. should be good enough so that it doesn't distract from the story. But it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. So here are top 10 tips from many years of experience on our side. Also, as I said, when I started creating video, I hadn't been trained. I was doing it myself, just off my own back, and I made some great successes, but I also made some mistakes. So these are our top 10 tips based on what we've learned. Particularly, these are true if you're making your own videos, but they're actually true of creating any videos, even if you're working with a professional video production company. So number 10 is to start with the end in mind. It's very important. I kind of touched on it earlier, but have a very clear focus for why you are making this video and what are you trying to achieve. To break that down a little into more step-by-step, kind of a step-by-step process, sometimes I use this example. If I was Sir Alan Sugar and I was talking to all of you, the apprentices, and I said to you, make me a cake. It's your task. You've got to be back in 24 hours. Make me a cake. I'll stay for 2 minutes, and you can ask me any questions you'd like to. So you hear questions like, you know, what's the budget? What's the occasion? Who's the audience? How many people? What's the date? What's the deadline for it? Have you got any allergies? So many different questions. So it's obviously an analogy, but it's the same kind of questions you need to ask yourself when you're actually creating your own video. Break it down. What's your shopping list when you go to the supermarket? Similarly, you know, when you're going out to capture the elements for this story, who do you need to speak to? What are the key messages you'd like to drive for them? What are the key questions you therefore need to ask them? Are there any other visual elements to the story that you need to capture while you're there? And if you create a list for yourself like that and break it down, then it will give you some real good structure. And when you leave at the end of the day, if you've managed to tick off everything, then you know you have the elements to take back to the edit, kind of like the pieces of your jigsaw, if you like. Number 8, bit of a coin joke here, but it's a very important point. So the camera is not a Hoover; it's a gun, and this is why we call it shooting. So if you come to filming as a layperson, you'll inevitably, because we're so used to sort of filming on our phones and just uploading straight to the web or to share it with our friends, we're in the mindset that what we film right here and now is the film. But when we're filming more professionally or trying to create a story with a bit more of a professional, like as the professionals would, if you like, you film it in quite a different way. Instead of just vacuuming up a scene, you'll actually think carefully about the shots and capture a variety of shots, and that will help you tell your story. And it doesn't have to be in real time. You can capture them in any order, because really what we're doing is we're taking them back to rearrange them when we edit. So we sometimes say before you film you should put your editor's hat on, so that you're thinking as the editor. So you'll want to get establishing shots, so like the first shot on the top left there, wider shots that establish the scene that you're capturing. Then you may get a variety of other shots, close-up shots, mid shots, and mostly you'll actually hold these shots for probably about 10 seconds each, which may seem strange at the time, but essentially you're collecting like jigsaw pieces to help tell your story later. So it's a slightly different way of using the camera. Getting great results is now very possible on a budget. The equipment is very, very accessible, very affordable. People often ask, well, what camera should I get? You can actually film on your phone. The cameras on phones are getting much, much, much better all the time. The one thing that you may find difficult, though, is capturing good sound, but there are ways to sort of work around that, given the constraints you may have. The camcorder style cameras at the top there are the ones that we tend to recommend for people if they're serious about getting regular content. Panasonic V720 has an external microphone input. It's a very good camera. It's about £300 around about. X920 is a slightly better camera, similar look and feel, but it also has a headphone socket so you can actually monitor what you're recording on sound as well. It is around about £600. DSLR cameras, again, there are a huge range of very good DSLR cameras that will get great results. Again, you need to be probably a little bit more of an enthusiast or willing to kind of study how they work a little more, because they're a little bit more technical, but well worth it if you're really keen to take it up seriously. Some of the point-and-shoot ones, Kodak ZA8 was a great one, a bit like the Flip, but they've gone out of business as well. I think phones are really taking over in that sort of category. And the GoPro is an amazing kind of camera. It's waterproof, pretty much shockproof. It'll connect to your chest, to your head for skydiving, connect to your bicycle handlebars, and you can get some really amazing footage with that as well. And it's quite, it can really add to sort of your production. Playing to your strengths is very much about being authentic. UnLtd, who are a very well-renowned video research sharing organization, they do research into what makes people share, and they have platforms to kind of share video all over the world. And their research said that what might work for one organization, you shouldn't necessarily imitate it or copy it. What the approach you take to distribute your videos, or to create your videos, whether people are creating viral videos that are very humorous or whatever, the statistics show that people, if it doesn't feel like it fits with your brand or the ethos of the values of your brand, they won't necessarily share it in the same way that they would where it does fit with another brand. So it's not about mimicking or copying others. It's about finding creative ways to make your videos shareable that are actually in line with the values of your brand. So playing to your strengths is very much about being authentic, but it's also, I think if you are creating your own videos, it's about actually access. The people that you work with, if they're vulnerable particularly, or if they're vulnerable groups in society, they'll have a relationship and a trust with you, and they'll often open up to you with much smaller cameras if you're filming yourself, more so than they will if you bring in a professional video production company. Don't bore people. This is very much about the length. Now, when we ask people this, they all say, what's the ideal length? Some people say 1 minute, some people say 2 minutes, some people say 3 minutes. I think it depends on the type of video you're trying to make and what's the purpose. We tend to create a lot of our videos now between 2 and 3 minutes. Online, people are ruthless. They really do switch off very easily. But if you're trying to, capture a case study of an entire year's piece of work, it's difficult to capture it, to get any depth to the story in less than sort of 2 to 3 minutes. That said, it's about understanding why people are clicking on your video. If they want to learn something, there are graphics tutorials that a lot of our team will watch, which are 40 minutes long. So it very much depends on the purpose and what it is you're trying to achieve with the video. But generally speaking, online, the shorter the better, without sort of losing the message of what it is you're trying to say. Ending with the beginning in mind might sound like a play on start with the end in mind, but what you'll often find is that along the way you've started out with a really clear focus, but then you maybe got a bit distracted, you end up filming a lot more stuff, someone asks you, oh, why don't we interview this person as well, and so on and so forth, and your 3-minute video that you're trying to make is turned into a 7-minute edit, so at this stage. So you really need to be ruthless and really focus on what did I set out to achieve? What is it I'm actually trying to achieve with this piece? If there may be some good stuff there, but it's not actually specifically related or going to help me to achieve the objective for this particular video. If there are two people, maybe you're doing a film about an event, and they both make a similar point, get rid of one of them. It will really help you to kind of refine your edit down so it comes in line with the length that you want it to be, and for it to be really strong and focused on what it is you're trying to achieve. If you do make your own videos, if you do want to do it, you're saving on money, but it does take time. There is a bit of an iceberg effect. It gets easier, and obviously you'll get faster as you go along. But in the beginning, be willing to put in, the time to actually get it right, and just be aware of that and factor it in, because inevitably it'll be on top of all the other things that you've got to do. And I guess you're all busy people as it is. We sometimes, I don't know if you can relate to this, but we have this disease where we want to be perfect, and I think my advice would be, particularly if you're starting out with it, don't try and create a masterpiece straight off the bat. You don't need to impress anybody. I think if you want to really capture video as a tool, a powerful tool to help you tell your stories, then get the basics down first. Learn how to tell a simple story well using video. And then you can build it up from there. And most importantly, whether it's storytelling in general or whether it's trying to create your own videos, it's practice. Dedication will help you to become better and better. So don't worry if you don't get it right straight away. But it is absolutely worth investing some time and energy into being able to use video as a tool, because it has the potential to massively help you achieve what it is you're trying to do. Okay, I'm just going to cover a few technical aspects just to give you some insight into some practical things. So this video, firstly we'll just have a quick look. So this is a sort of blueprint, if you like, or the overview of any edit, or certainly a simple edit when using video to tell your story. So just so when you break it down into component parts, sometimes it's easier to understand. So the first part that you can see is your story. This will often be made up of an interview or a series of interviews that will help tell your story. Number two is cutaways, which essentially means visual cutaways that we can cut away to. So we still hear the audio, we still hear the story, but we can use these visuals to enhance what's being said or what's not being said by actually showing other aspects that are related, so people can take in both at the same time and get a bigger picture of what it is we're trying to say. Cutaways are also particularly useful because they can actually disguise any cuts in our interviews, so that people don't see those ugly jump cuts, which sometimes you see in sort of more amateur videos. Also, then we can introduce titles at the beginning, a call to action at the end, with your website or what it is you'd like the viewer to do next. And of course music. And music is very powerful in terms of connecting emotionally with your audience, but you have to be aware also about royalty-free music, because there are legal copyright issues obviously around using music that you don't have the right to use. This is the same sort of structure inside an editing program, and we recommend on our courses Adobe Premiere Elements. It's available on Mac and PC. It's quite affordable. It's about £70. It's very much, it's got lots of great functions. You can do more than you need to do, certainly for quite a while if you're starting out. And it's very easy to use, very, very intuitive and very well signposted and so on. So just quickly, I don't know if any of you have ever had this issue when taking photographs or video. It's a short video. It just kind of helps you overcome a common obstacle that you may sometimes encounter.
We're here at the Bullring environment just to give you an example of how this Clip HD camera, which is a good example of a low-end camera, can sometimes be a little bit stupid. Now, these cameras have a thing called automatic exposure. What that means is the camera is adjusting the amount of light that's coming into the camera based on what it's seeing. Now, behind me I've obviously got a bright sky, and so I'm becoming underexposed, which means I'm very dark and pretty much like a silhouette, hopefully. If I was just walk around here, literally, you can see the difference in the picture quality, and that now I'm lit by the sun itself. The background should all be quite similar to me, and obviously I hope we look a lot better.
So you can see there, very simple solution. Ansel Adams has a quote which was that taking photography or creating film is actually knowing where to stand. So sometimes it's about actually being able to just simply make a simple movement like that to actually get a much better shot. Lighting's a funny thing. Our eyes obviously are highly advanced in that sense. We can go into a room even if it's quite dark and see quite clearly. For cameras, they need a lot more light than we do. So it's worth bearing that in mind when you're deciding where to film. And we don't expect people starting off to have a three-point lighting system like this or to even have any lights at all necessarily, but we're just showing it quickly just to show how professionally an interview would be set up, for example. So you'd have a key light, which is a main light. You may have a fill light, which may just balance out any shadows on the other side of the face if that's what the look you're after. You'll have a backlight, which is very helpful. It kind of helps the subject to stand out from the background, rather than sometimes you may have like quite a flat look. So if you see in this image here, we've got a key light on the subject. You can just sort of see a slight glow around his right shoulder and back of his neck and head. This is a backlight helping to pick him out from the background. Now, the most important of all these lights really is the key light. So if you're thinking about, if you're filming someone in an environment, you need to think about where's your key light. You don't have to necessarily have a light. In the example we just saw, it was the sun. You may just bring someone over towards a window so that the light from the window is coming in on them, and you can get a really beautiful look like that. It's just being aware of making the best use of natural lighting. If you are indoors, you can switch on all the lights. The more light, the better, really. But one thing to just be a little bit aware of is indoor light and outdoor light have different color temperatures. So if the two are clashing and your image is either too blue or too orange, then you may wish to move so that it's predominantly more one light or the other. Sound is huge. There's sort of a couple of tips with this. The best thing is to get a camera that you can use an external microphone with, and so that the microphone is right next to your subject's mouth. If you don't have a camera like that, or you have a camera which just essentially has the microphone but it's on the camera itself, or that'll often be the case with phones, then try to move the subject to a quieter environment where there's less background sounds, and try to be close to them. And then often you can actually still get quite good sound. You'd be amazed if you're doing an interview in a room and you've got like a clock ticking and you've got like air conditioning on and all these things. They may interfere, and sometimes, especially with air conditioning, we'll get that kind of white noise hiss. Try to eliminate, where possible, background sounds that might be distracting. Cool. So composition. Any of you who are sort of interested in photography will probably know about this, and a lot of people may have an innate sort of natural eye for composition. But if you haven't, and this can be particularly helpful, it's the golden rule of thirds. So it's where you divide an image up into horizontally 3 parts and vertically 3 parts. So you can see here, this is a great example of knowing where to stand. So the ocean is kind of on the bottom third, the rocks are in the left third, and that cloud is right up there in that top third. So it just looks nice. You don't necessarily know why, but this kind of, as a background piece of knowledge, is very helpful to help position things. So you can see here, with any image, there's kind of 3 things I think that really help it to stand out. One is the subject matter. So obviously things like kids and puppies and so on will always evoke a strong reaction. The other is the color contrast. So for example, with this, if this lighthouse was white, it might not have stood out so much. So there's a really nice contrast of color. But also it's the composition. So you can see this has been really nicely composed to give real depth in the picture. This is just one from The Shining. It's actually interesting because it doesn't look like it actually fits with the rule, but actually it does. But most importantly, it's very useful when you're doing interviews, especially off-camera interviews like this, so where the subject is looking to an interviewer that's unseen, just slightly off-camera. So you can actually see, generally we would say put the eyes on the top third and the person's body, if they're on the left-hand side of the frame, sort of centered on that left third. You'll always have them on the, so if they're looking across the frame, so if they're looking across to the right, you'll put them on the left, and similarly if they're looking across to the left, you'll put them on the right. This is a classic off-camera interview style that you'll see pretty much all interviews on TV done in this style. Tips for interviewing. I think there's a pretty much just going to finish up on this. I think I often do this when we're doing our working with our clients. It's the interviewer can often be the producer as well, and it's your responsibility to actually make sure that you leave the day's filming with everything that you need, and that you get the most out of the person you're interviewing. What I tend to do is I will go in and obviously greet them and be very friendly and sort of explain very clearly what it is we're trying to do. We'll often say, look, we're making a 3-minute film, so we're just after a sort of a 15-second bit from you on a couple of particular points, and they'll go, great. You'll ask them the first question and they'll speak for 3 minutes, pretty much every time. So what I tend to do is I will always let them go for the 3 minutes for a couple of reasons. Firstly, they're relaxing. They're just getting into it. They're gathered in their thoughts and they're kind of getting some clarity around their answer. And also, you're listening to them very, very carefully, and you're really, really picking up on the messaging. And you often can then say to them, that was great. Let's just do it one more time now, and let's just focus in on this bit, this bit, and this bit. And you kind of get what you need. And actually, it's a real kind of partnership in a way. And actually, they're happy to be guided by you, and you are able to focus in on what it is you really need to get. Also, it's very important when you ask questions, if you're off camera, to not speak when they're speaking. So you don't want to be going, like that, because it will be very distracting, particularly if you're not going to be seen in the final film. And also, it's quite hard to do actually, but you need to be still very encouraging and nodding your head and all the rest of it, but just not making any sound. The other thing is to ask them to explain to them that if your questions are not going to be heard in the film, that they need to answer in such a way that their answers are standalone. The context of your question is in their answer. And they may get that straight away, or you may need to remind them. Okay, great. So, in terms of next steps, if you are, hopefully some of the stuff we've talked about, you can go back and revisit, and it will help you to get clarity around the story that you're trying to tell, and why you're trying to tell it as well. If on this sort of topic that we've just been on, if you are actually going to try and be creating your own videos, it's really important to plan well before you set out. This is also true if you're working with a video production company as well. Create a shot list for your story. Get real clarity. Get down to the detail. You may not have an exact shot list for everything, but be very clear on the things that you really need to make sure you get. And if you are going to try and do it yourself, the way you'll get better is to practice. Practice filming and editing regularly. Even if it's just, with the equipment you have at this time. Video is a tool that it is well worth investing some time and energy into being able to use to help tell your story, particularly when you have stories that have the potential to really change people's lives for the better. You can connect with us and share. We're at Be Inspired Films on YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, Facebook. We also have our video training courses at videoknowhow.co.uk. And also on Twitter at Video Know-How. And the next training courses, they're not on the website yet, but they'll be London January 23rd and Birmingham January 27th, I believe. So I'm very happy to take some questions, and I hope what we've shared with you today was useful. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ravinal. That was really good. For somebody who remembers Betamax and VHS, video has really come along. So it was a great presentation highlighting the power of video and storytelling, so thank you very much. We've got loads of questions, so it just shows how everybody has been engaged with your presentation. So can I just ask one of the questions, will the slides be available after the webinar? Is that okay to pass them on to our listeners?
I believe, I think the best way to be available is through the webinar. Is that okay? If people can can access them through the webinar.
That's brilliant. That's great. Yeah. So if we start with the questions, one of the questions, do you have any other suggestions for distribution services, partners or channels?
Sure. It depends on whether it's paid or unpaid, as I said. I think if you're going to pay, I think there's a fantastic organization that we've done another presentation with in the past and managed to follow up with, and they're called UnRuly, UNRULY. They're an amazing organization, and they have fantastic distribution channels. I mean, it is paid for. Non-paid for, I think I'll just reiterate what I said. You know, it's about finding people who have large communities of their own that are related to, or that would be a good audience for you, and actually making that relationship to ask them whether they'd be willing to share your content. I think from experience what they'll say is they would be potentially willing to share it, but it needs to be aimed at the end user, if you know what I mean. It needs to be content that's actually of value to the end user rather than just you push, you know, if it's a bit salesy or markety, or it's more about you than it is of value to the end user, then they may not be willing to share it. So hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm sure that answers everybody's questions. A couple of people have asked, what's the name of the editing software again?
Yeah, it's Adobe Premiere Elements. So it's basically the sort of more consumer version of Adobe Premiere Pro, but in actual fact, particularly if you're starting off, it's a lot easier to use. It's all of the key functions are sort of, they don't have icons on them. They literally say what it is that you can do. So it says add media, project assets, publish and share, transitions. It's really, really easy to use, and we use it all the time on our courses. And we researched a lot of the different ones, and for something of an affordable level, ease of use and functionality, we find it to be the best.
That's great. So. Claire, she's asking, would a video or photo slideshow with voiceover be a good basic start if there's no video footage to work with?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the simplest video you can make, but actually can be very, very powerful, particularly if you kind of think it through carefully, would be to create a voiceover. So write yourself a short script. So that's good because you have complete control over your message then. You can really think it through and create something that's quite powerful. Record it as a voiceover, so if you don't have audio recording equipment, you can potentially record it on a camera with a microphone and then bring it into your editing software. And mostly, in most editing softwares, you'll be able to unlink the video and the audio, and you can just keep the audio part and delete the video part as a voiceover. And then you can bring in images, like Claire says, photos, and just pull them in and have them transition between each other to kind of bring to life what it is you're saying in your voiceover. And something like that you could potentially do in a couple of hours. The thing that might take you a little bit of time is sourcing the right imagery, but if you've got good imagery for what you do in photo form, then absolutely, you know, it can actually be a very powerful yet simple way to create a good video.
Brilliant. We're getting lots of people saying how grateful they are for all the tips, and they've really enjoyed the presentation.
Pleasure.
Somebody's asking, Steve's asking, is there a recommended iPhone add-on to improve sound?
I believe things like that are changing all the time. I'm sure you know, you could Google it and have a look, but I do know that there are adapters, and I think now you can even buy microphones which have an adapter in them that you can plug into the iPhone headphone socket, and it actually turns the headphone socket into a kind of like a microphone input. So you know, that's certainly worth looking at. We for our courses, we had bought some of the adapters, but I think now it's even moved a step on, and you can actually buy the adapter built into a microphone. So I guess if you search for iPhone microphone or that kind of thing, you'll be able to see. But that is quite cool because, you know, now you can buy little clamps that you can actually screw onto the top of a tripod. So you could actually put your iPhone on a tripod. And if you have one of these microphones that you can plug in, you could potentially be able to create good sound and video on something like an iPhone, which not everybody has, but many, a lot of people have smartphones nowadays. Each one will maybe slightly different, but I know that for sure that you can get something like that for the iPhone. Yeah.
Brilliant. Steve's asking, where do you find free mood music, background music? Is there a place?
Yes. There are various sites that we use. They're not free. I'm sure there are some free sites as well. The ones that we tend to use are audio networks, and then there's another one called audiojungle.net, I believe. There's another one called Premium Beats, and there may be other ones if you search for free royalty-free music. But the quality obviously depends. From our experience, if you want to get really good tracks, then you tend to need to pay a little bit for them. But there are charity prices on there. So I'm not sure if you can see their criteria for social enterprise will categorize as a charity, but you can get them for very reasonable rates compared to the commercial rates. But audio networks tends to be a slightly higher quality, but the other two are you can still get really good tracks on there as well.
Brilliant, that's really helpful, thank you for that. Quentin's asking, what sort of budget should we set for a 2 to 3 minute film with a professional video company?
It really depends. I mean, I guess, obviously, it could literally be millions, depending on the organization, but I'm sure he hasn't got millions. It's difficult to say. It's not so much by the time that the length of the video. It's more about the time that the company needs to commit to actually, how much of their time you're going to need to create it. So it depends. And if you have like I said in the slides, it's better if you have a fixed budget, something that you can afford, to be upfront with them at the beginning and say, look, this is what we have. Our costs for creating something like that for 1 day's filming, including all of the pre-planning and storyboarding and ideas, 1 day's filming with a producer interview and a cameraman and all the editing afterwards is around starts from £4,600. You'll probably be able to find people cheaper, and you'll certainly be able to find people more expensive. But if, for example, you approached us and you said, we would prefer, so I can only speak for ourselves, and I think this would probably be true for other production companies, if you approached us and said, look, this is our budget, can you help us for that? That might be a better way around.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Great. And another question from Martin. Do you recommend storyboarding?
It depends on what it is the type of film you're doing. If you're doing sort of like an animation or something, you absolutely have to storyboard it because it's so, specific to the type of visuals, and you're actually needing to create the visuals for the animation. So you absolutely need to plan it out. If you're doing a very stylized piece, or if you're doing something that's involving actors or whatever, then absolutely you need to storyboard it out. If you're doing more of a promo type film, it depends. I wouldn't necessarily say that you need to storyboard it all out. I think what you need to do is break it down into the component parts. So what are the key points you want to cover, and who are the key people that you want to say, to convey those points. And then once you've got this, sort of almost like one slide I forgot to put in was a train track. So you've got 2 tracks. You've got your story sits on 2 tracks. You've got the audio part of your story, which is the message, and then you've got the visual side. So say, for example, you're covering an event. You want to make a video about an event. If you kind of plan out what are the key messages and who are the key players that you need to interview, and what you get that side right, in the edit, the first part that you'll do is actually get the story right audio-wise. So you'll lay that down, and once you've got that fixed, now you know the length of your video, and now you know kind of where, now you know specifically when you put your visuals in place, they're going to be fixed. Those visuals, it comes with practice, I suppose. In the beginning, you might make a list for yourself of all the things, people arriving at the venue, getting their badges, in the room filling up, speakers on stage, people asking questions, people networking at lunchtime, having lunch, and so on and so forth. You might make a list for yourself. After time, I guess it becomes kind of second nature, but it is worth noting down, at least in a list form, all the things you need to cover. But when you come to the edit, sometimes it'll fit in the way it fits in. It's very hard to storyboard something like an event if you haven't seen it yet. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When you capture your footage, it'll make more sense as to where things will fit. Hopefully that helps. It's a bit of a rambling answer, but hopefully it helps.
And Miranda's asking, many thanks, Ravenel. Any advice on filming in a room with a number of people talking, so you can't pass a microphone round?
So, in other words, is it like a panel discussion or something like that, maybe?
Yeah, so there's a number of people that you're talking to and you don't want to pass the microphone around to each person. Have you got any advice on how you can overcome that situation?
Sure. It's a little bit tricky without... the best way to cover that, the best way would be to have 3 cameras, really. You'd have one camera on a wide shot, which kind of establishes the panel. Then you'd have a camera sort of on one side facing one way and another side facing the other way, particularly if there's going to be debate or dialogue or interaction. You don't want to have to be kind of panning across, zooming in, zooming out. Ideally, I mean, this may not be possible, but ideally you don't want to ever show the maneuvering of the cameras, if you like. You want to have it as a seamless viewer experience. So that's how we would do it. We would have a camera, to cover, one side of the panel and another side, and while we're on one camera, the other camera might be reframing to capture whoever's speaking at that time. In terms of audio, if you have 3 cameras, you could potentially have a microphone connected to each one, and if there's a table in front of them, you could have 3 microphones sort of on the table on little stands to kind of capture a spread of sound, or it depends on how many people there are. It's a bit tricky, to be honest, without kind of knowing exactly the circumstances. But yeah, it's one that you'd need to think through carefully.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sure those tips will really help the people. So I'm afraid we're going to have to finish the questions now. If I can ask anybody if they would like to email Ravenel direct with any questions. And just another thank you. That was brilliant. Knowing about the cheaper version of Adobe is really useful. So really positive comments coming through, Ravenel, about the presentation. So on behalf of UnLtd, I'd just like to thank you for today's presentation. It's been really beneficial, and I've learned a lot about the power of video and how it can promote your social enterprise. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you. We love you guys at UnLtd and stuff you're doing and helping social entrepreneurs. So it's a pleasure to be part of it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, then.
Take care. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.